So what's her message? What's her message? First of all, she herself is the message as a role model, and she studies with her kids role models. They read fiction books, they read historical books, they read books about heroes and talk about heroes. They all identify role models. They identify role models in their neighborhood, in their families, constantly doing that, which is exactly what you need to cultivate resilience. But first and foremost, she herself is the role model. She has high expectations. We're going to do a lot of believing in ourselves. We're going to do well, succeed. She expects a lot. She sees the potential. She appreciates that potential in each individual. Stop blaming others. Take responsibility for your life. Marva Collins is no pushover. If you see her in the classroom, she's tough, she's demanding. At the same time, she respects each individual. She's not one of the Pollyannish feel-good, let's make them all feel good at all costs. Not at all. She believes in them, she respects them, and she's tough and demanding. An important combination for leadership, which is why I mentioned it earlier in the context of a great leadership book. There are many very nice ex-CEOs whose primary aim was to be nice and to be liked. The key is to get the job done, to get the work done while being respectful. Sense of optimism. You can do well, you are going to do well, helping them set goals for themselves and for the community. And finally, from focusing on deficiencies to focusing on strengths. Howard Gardner, from the Ed School here, talks about multiple intelligences, says that we need to stop asking whether or not a student is smart. What we need to ask is, what is the student smart at? And when we identify what that student is smart at, strong at, virtuous at, good at, then we appreciate it. And when we appreciate it, it and the whole person appreciates. What would happen to a seed? A seed is a potential. Flower, tree. What happens to a seed if it is not watered, if no light is shed on it? It will wither and die. The exact same thing with human potential. If we don't water it, if we don't shed light on it, it will wither and die. The same with interpersonal relationship potential. If we don't water, and we'll talk a lot about relationships, how to cultivate healthy long-term relationships. If you don't water, if you don't shed light, if you don't appreciate the good will depreciate. Essentially, what Marva Collins does is create for her students, and what the research in resilience does, is create a very different model than the conventional wisdom. The paradigm shift, essentially, is from being a passive victim, well, it's because the government is not putting enough money, which is an issue, not belittling it. It's important to have those external affect the internal, like more resources. But that's not enough. From a passive victim, she changes their perspective to being active agents. You're not unteachable. You can thrive, you can do well, you can succeed. And what she does, essentially, is take them to the extreme of a continuum, because every event, every person can be situated somewhere along this continuum, and in different places where different things. And think about your own life. What are you? Passive victim in different situations, or an active agent? For example, let's say my girlfriend leaves me. I know when I was an undergrad here, this was top on my mind. Girlfriend's leaving me. Yes, we'll talk about that later in the semester when we get to know one another a little bit better. I feel a bit shy at this point. But let's say my girlfriend leaves me. If I'm the passive victim, what I experience is self-pity, feel sorry for myself, ruminate, remember the word ruminate, about the situation and how terrible it is. If I'm a passive victim, I then move to blame. She's terrible, it's her fault. I blame her, I blame my parents for the way they raised me. I blame her parents. I blame, President Bush or whomever. And after I blame, I experience frustration as well as anger. Anger toward her, anger toward my parents, her President Bush, Hillary, whoever it is. I feel anger. And results? Very few results. Because I wallow in rumination and self-pity. Now let's take the other extreme of the active agent. First of all, by definition, I take action. I take responsibility. I go out to places, after experiencing the pain, and it's painful, and next time we're going to talk about the importance of experiencing the pain, of giving ourselves what I call the permission to be human. But once I experience that, I take action. I go out there to places where I will meet someone. I go to Pinocchio's. Or another meeting place, the Stacks in Widener. And well, I guess things have changed at Harvard since I was an undergrad, but I take responsibility for it. And then, as a result of that, and we'll talk about research on self-perception theory, research by Daryl Bem, and we'll talk a lot about it. You don't need to write it down now. How taking action will actually increase our levels of confidence. And then, more hope and optimism as a result. And as we'll talk about the beliefs of self-fulfilling prophecy lecture, hope and optimism become a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm much more likely to find someone. I'm certainly much more likely to be happy.